Hello guys, Bill here, hoping you're having a good day. So we're gonna do the articulation practice. What we're gonna do is we're gonna listen. I found this Oxford Union speech. We'll see how much of that we can watch, and then along the way we'll try to communicate the idea which was shared. Although I might not understand those fully, but still I'll try to convey at my end. So that's a practice set. So here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, good evening. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the world watched as a clear blue sky tore open, watched steel collapse, watched glass fall like rain, watched thousands swallowed in smoke and fire and dust. What broke that day was not only the skyline of New York, but the sense that the world was safe, predictable, and comprehensible. Tonight, I will argue three things. First, that the response to 9/11, both at home and abroad, was wildly disproportionate to its stated aims. Second, that this response was not an innocent mistake, but an opportunistic project driven by ambition, corruption, and imperial strategy. Third, that in trying to
Okay, I'm gonna get her off right now. So basically, what she's putting in is the idea that post 9/11, they weaponize the event and they caused the devastation in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Syria. So they just found a reason to invade those regions. And that was weaponized in a way that hurt the humanity. It wasn't for the benefit. It was, on the contrary, it caused a lot of chaos, a lot of deaths, and it was just a reckoning of chaos.
expand American power, the United States weakened itself, and the American people paid that cost. But before I outline my case, it is my honor and indeed my duty to introduce the speakers for side opposition. Firstly, you shall hear from Oksana Sultan, our wonderful Director of Media here at the Union. Oksana is a UN Legal Fellow, an international lawyer, an Eisenhower Scholar, and a good friend. Her work focuses on gender justice, human rights, and shaping the international legal order. With publications in leading law journals and citations in UN Special Reporters, she spends her days analysing global power structures and her evenings writing them. Next, you will hear from Peter Bergen, CNN's national security analyst, best-selling author, and a man who has spent so long writing about Osama bin Laden that one sometimes wonders whether he was there as a journalist or there as an unofficial biographer. His books include The Holy War, The Osama bin Laden I Know, Manhunt, and The Rise and Fall of Osama bin Laden.
Okay, so there are the so basically the two things going on here. So it's a debate. So they're gonna put forward a motion, and then against the motion, there are a few members who are gonna put their arguments against that motion. So the motion they are putting forward is that post 9/11 event, it was exploited and weaponized, and in that weaponization, the America uses domestic uh, agenda to project their power, to expand it domestically, surveillance-wise, and it was just a mean for an end, and so they devastated the whole world. So let's see what's the contrary argument gonna be from the opposition.
Peter conducted bin Laden's first ever televised interview in 1997 and has since explained the war on terror to Washington so many times he's testified before Congress 18 times. So, if anyone here can tell you with a straight face that 9/11 wasn't weaponized to expand American power, it's the man who has documented every single way it has. Following him is Michael Later, former director of the US National Counterterrorism Center, Supreme Court clerk, president of the Harvard Law Review, Navy flight officer, and the proud owner of more security clearances than most of us have had hot dinners. He served both President Bush and President Obama. He helped reform half of Washington's intelligence architecture and later joined Palantir to advise on national security. If you're wondering whether 9/11 was used to expand the American empire, Michael is uniquely qualified. He spent years inside the very machinery that expanded. Lastly, Michael Chertoff, former Secretary of Homeland Security, former federal judge, co-author of the US Patriot Act, prosecutor of the mafia, investigator of the Clintons, and advisor to the CIA on interrogation policy. Since leaving office, he has founded a security firm so packed with former intelligence officials.
Okay, I'm gonna get her off right here. So I've just asked us to summarize the video. So the video presented debate at the Oxford Union on the motion. The House believed that 9/11 was weaponized to expand the American empire. The proposition argued that the U.S. government exploited the 9/11 attacks to pursue pre-existing imperial ambitions, both domestically and internationally. And part of the reason is the disproportionate response abroad. The war in Afghanistan and Iraq were not merely response to terrorism, but opportunistic projects to expand American power. They argue that the war in Afghanistan, lasting 20 years and costing trillions, ultimately saw the Taliban return. The Iran-Iraq war was based on lies about weapons of mass destructions and linked to Al-Qaeda, leading to immense civilian casualties and regional destabilization. Expansion of domestic power, the Patriot Act is cited as an example of weaponizing the tragedy to expand domestic surveillance and restrict civilian liberties. Political and economic gain. The proportion highlights how politicians' popularity surge and defense contractor profit exploded post 9/11. Okay, so that's like the motion, and then against the motion, the opposition contends that the motion conspiratorial farming is deeply troubling and lack evidence of intent to weaponize the tragedy. They argue that the US response, while perhaps flawed, was not an imperialistic plot. Absence of imperial intent, the distinguish American actions from historical empire, like British emphasizing that the US did not expropriate resources or impose permanent subjugation, focus on withdrawal. US leaders consistently sought to withdraw forces from Afghanistan and Iraq, only returning in small number when requested by host governments. Definition of empire. They argue that the propositions broad definition of empire render the term meaningless. Okay, let's get into it.
That it practically functions as a government in exile. If there is a reason in this chamber, if there is a person in this chamber who embodies the policy world built after 9/11, it's Michael Chertoff. Mr. President, these are your guest speakers tonight, and they are most welcome. One month after the attacks, the Taliban refused to hand over Osama bin Laden, and President Bush declared war on Afghanistan. The aim, we were told, simple: destroy Al-Qaeda, remove the Taliban, and make America safe. But this was not a manhunt. It was not a targeted raid. It was war, a project to remake a nation. A war that lasted 20 years, cost $2 trillion, killed tens of thousands of civilians. A war to vanquish the Taliban, only for the Taliban to return in just 10 days after American withdrawal. 20 years of sacrifice, undone in 10 days of advance.
of advance.
And if Afghanistan was a tragedy,
It was a tragedy.
Iraq was
Iraq
a crime.
was a crime.
Iraq had no role in 9/11.
Had no
Iraq
role.
had no Al Qaeda sanctuary. Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction. Yet in 2003, the US Secretary of State held up a small vial and presented the world with a large lie. On that lie, America launched a second war against Iraq. Americans were told it was preventative. They were told it was democracy. They were told it was for their safety. They were not misinformed. They were not misled. They were lied to. 500,000 Iraqi civilians dead. Thousands of American soldiers killed. More than the number of civilians who died on 9/11. ISIS rising from the rubble. A country shattered beyond recognition. Members, that is not security. It is not justice. It is imperial overreach. If we are to honor the dead, we must confront not only the failures after 9/11, but the failures before it too. The CIA knew Al-Qaeda operatives were in the United States before 9/11. The FBI knew extremists were training in flight schools. Foreign intelligence services warned of an impending attack. Information was not shared. Threats were not connected. And action was not taken. And what was the consequence of this catastrophic failure? Accountability?
Accountability?
None. Reform?
Reform?
None.
None.
The agencies that failed were rewarded. Their budgets ballooned. Their powers expanded. Their leaders stayed in post, and the American people paid the price. Some reforms were reasonable. Better intelligence sharing, federalized airport security, improved emergency responses, but 2 wars were not a reasonable response. They were not necessary. They were not acts of justice. They were declarations of ambition. While America bombed abroad, it rewrote the rules at home. A month after 9/11, Congress passed the USA Patriot Act, a law that radically expanded domestic surveillance. Some say that act was merely preventative. But tell that to the teenagers whose phones were tapped.
Okay, well, I'm gonna get back. So basically, yeah, so there are 2 parties debating the proposition. One is arguing against it, another one is for it. And the bottom line is that whether America weaponized post 9/11 the incident, whatever happened in Iraq, in Syria, in Afghanistan was unfortunate, and whatever happened, it could have been avoided if we had our senses, and a lot of those drama can also be avoided. The bloodshed which happened in other countries like Pakistan, a lot of Taliban got killed. And it's not about being the good guy or the bad guy, because it's going to be subjective, very subjective based on your ideology. I don't mean to say that there are no objective righteousness, but at the end, some things are very gray. It's not as obvious as white and black and white. So you better be careful if you're treading on those territories where you understand very little. So to have that, you have to have understanding, deep understanding of the political affairs happening around the world, and especially the superpowers, what they're doing, what they've done in the past, and how the history works, like the political history works. So yeah, that was a video. I'll continue to record those things, and part of the reason is that I have to get better at speaking. I have to understand, and one day I will be there presenting certain idea, and I don't want to sound confused. So I wanna I don't want to shutter. I just want to articulate myself best possible way because it can be for the good cause. So you better be prepared. If the opportunity strike, you can practice. So practicing is like speaking, and you have to speak each day. Wake up, listen out. Whatever the content you're consuming, you have to give the output. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. I I'll see you in another video. So have a good one. Bye bye.